involved in things that don't align with your values, you've got to remove them from your organization. And it comes at a cost. I mean, we went through a big one with the DeLille matter, with the mayor of George, people who did not share our values and principles, and we had to take action against them. But I think it is worth it. And I think that voters can take comfort in the fact that we're prepared to do so. Because if you don't, you end up exactly where the ANC find themselves now, where everybody in the party knows somebody else is citizens. And you can't then act against anybody, because if I act against you, well, you're going to spill the beans that I was involved in this tender. And then you end up with a moribund organization that cannot move and cannot stand for anything. So politics, in politics, you've got to be a signpost, not a weather vane that blows in the wind. You've got to be a signpost that points people in a direction, no matter which way the wind is blowing.
One thing I'm sure both of you will have no real truck with is the fact that we're living at a very precarious stage in South Africa's development and in the history of this country. We've got to a point now where after several years of democracy and several years of freedom for the majority of the people of this country, we don't have a lot to show for it. And we've seen, at least in the last 10 years, some substantial decline in the size of the economy, in the job prospects of individuals, in the education system, in the service delivery of municipalities. This is a local and municipal election. These are the most interesting ones, even though they don't get the kind of coverage and attention and attraction that the national elections get. John, are you standing in your own ward in this particular election? And Muzili, can you tell us about where you guys are focused? Because those issues are the things that most people are interested in here. And they're not glamorous. They're not exciting. It's things like burst pipes.
I've sat in a council, and I know how important it is to have a team with you, because politics is a numbers game, whether we like it or not. As long as the system is designed the way it is now, you need the numbers in council to get things done. Otherwise, you're a lone voice that sits at the back of the hall. You get to speak for 2 minutes, maybe once every second council meeting. You have to take a rota on motions and questions to the municipality, and it's very difficult to represent anybody's interests if you're a lone voice sitting at the back of a hall. It's just the way the system is designed. It's unfortunately a numbers game. Would we like to reform the system? Absolutely, which is why the DA has been driving electoral reform in the National Assembly. But politics, the reality is a numbers game. And you're right, it goes to the basics of getting things done. It's about service delivery. And that's why you'll notice the governing party is trying to make this election about anything other than service delivery. They're trying to make it about race. They're trying to make it about ethnicity. They're trying to make it around any other matter they can latch onto, because they've got such an appalling track record in delivery. They don't have a good story to tell in any municipality that they run around the country.
As I said at the beginning of this, I'm struggling even to get someone from the ANC, which is why, again, I appreciate both of you being here, to even talk to us, because they've got nothing to talk about. And everything that I'm going to bring up is going to embarrass them.
Well, that's exactly right. And Puli Marby was asked on TV the other night, can you point to one municipality that is a success? And he said Ekurhuleni. Ekurhuleni is a disaster.
No.
It's sitting for days. Trash is not collected. Pipes are broken. It is a complete disaster. So that's the best you can come. I can understand why they're trying to make this about anything other than service delivery.
I want to give Muzili a chance to just talk about electoral reform. It's a big part of what you guys are doing in the One South Africa movement. What kind of electoral reform are you looking at? I know independent candidates, and by the way, Muzili, I'm a big fan of independent candidates. I would like a Karen in my neighborhood to be standing, because those kind of people get things done. They really are. I mean, the Karens who we saw, doing things during lockdown, helping supply food to old age homes, going out and repairing potholes themselves. These are the kind of people. Harry Smith's a great example of where people stood up and were counted and did the right thing without having the politicians necessarily involved. Independent candidates are an important and vibrant part of any system. Do we have enough of a culture for that, though? And John, if you can just hold your breath for 10 seconds here, because I know that you guys have the political party infrastructure and the track record to be able to explain away independence. But I think that they're an important part of things, and I think Muzili will agree with me.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when I'm done, it would be interesting to hear from John what he means by, the DA supports electoral reform, and maybe we can get some comment on the bill that's currently sitting in Parliament, where absolutely nothing's been done, and it's been, we're heading into about 8 months until that deadline is up. So just for the benefit of your listeners, Gareth, about a year and a half ago, the Constitutional Court had formally put a judgment down to say that the fact that independent candidates cannot run at provincial and national level is actually unconstitutional. So they've given Parliament 2 years to amend the electoral bill, or the electoral act rather, to reflect that independent candidates should be able to run at those two levels. Now, we have word on the street that the ANC's plan is basically just to sort of take the bill and put a comma at the end and say independent candidates, which is so disappointing because it actually doesn't give any substantive form to the judgment and give independent candidates substantive power. And so the work we're doing now, when we ask the question about culture, is to say we actually need to use this local election to gain that momentum and to build that culture. And I can tell you that the independent candidates, the numbers from the IEC is that it's been doubled and then some in terms of how many independent candidates are actually running in this election. So was there a culture? A small one. Is it massively improving? Yes. And this is all in a ramp up to the next election and elections to come, to say electoral reform is fundamentally key to how we're going to develop our democracy. So yeah, I'd love to hear what the DA has been doing about electoral reform and the bill that's been sitting in Parliament for the last 18 or so months with nothing really substantive going on.
Well, you didn't tell me though what you guys want to do before I hand over to John. What you'd like to see. So independent candidates, as you say, part of it
is but one part. Yes.
Sure, there's broad agreement on that. But what are the other things that you'd like to see happen?
Okay, so we have a very extensive bill that's sitting in Parliament, and some of the issues that it covers is how many representatives we actually have in this country. I mean, we have a massive Parliament and MPs that just go on for days, and what are they actually doing, and the resources that it actually takes from this country. So it deals with that. It deals with gender representation, to say this is how we want to see genders represented, at least at a minimum threshold at national level. It deals with how we break up, how we even vote. So it deals with electronic voting, to say how are we going to develop our system. I mean, I'm sure everyone has had this experience. The IEC's current systems are actually so nightmarish and backdated that how many people were excluded from even registering to vote because their online system was just so terrible. So electoral reform is actually all-encompassing. Independent candidates is just that one part. Another part is, which is also extensively covered in the bill, is constituencies. How do we actually break South Africa into constituencies so that you actually know who your representative is in Parliament? I think if you did a survey with most South Africans, they can't tell you 5 parliamentarians because they don't know them, because they didn't vote for them, because there's absolutely no connection between your representative and you.
What's horrifying, and I think both of you are going to agree on this too, is that many of the candidates in these wards will only be decided afterwards. The parties, particularly the ANC, are so convinced that they're going to win that they'll just put someone in eventually. It doesn't matter who you're voting for.
And I think that's an important point you make, because that's also an important part of electoral reform, especially at national level. This thing of closed party lists is actually one of the biggest impediments that we have in this country. Why do I not know that if we get the amount of votes that these are the 20, 30, 40 people that are going to represent me, we have to move to a place where at least we have an open party list so that I can pre-decide that actually I'm not keen for this person, I'm not going to put my vote towards this party.
All right, John, you were shaking your head quite vigorously.
Yeah. Well, two things. There's a fundamental misunderstanding of politics. The lists are published on the IEC website long before election day, so those lists exist. I'm not defending the current system, but I mean we must be honest and upfront about facts, because facts do matter. Every party is required to publish their list on the IEC website. You can go and have a look. You can go have a look anytime you want.
If those are the rules of the game, then you've got to make sure you fulfill the game's rules in order to have victory conditioning established. Okay, fine.
So the other point I just want to make about their bill, and it proves my point exactly, they've got a 2-member party that has sponsored their bill in Parliament. And it's going nowhere because that party doesn't have the heft in Parliament to be able to get it onto committee agendas, to be able to get it through the channels, and to be able to get those things done. That's why their bill is stalled and why it's sitting there. Maybe an electoral reform bill in the last Parliament which would seek to take South Africa and divide it into our parliament into half PR, half constituency based, because what you don't want to do is move to a full constituency system, because then precisely the minority voices that one say they're wanting to make sure are heard in parliament would be completely decimated by two big parties. You'd end up with two parties sitting in parliament if it was a complete constituency system. So we proposed a mixed system, much like you have at local government. In terms of the ward candidates, you will know who your ward candidate is. You will be voting for your ward candidate. That cannot change unless that person resigns after election day, in which case it'd be a by-election. It is the PR list system, I think, at the local government level that I think that the other guest was referring to, and not to, so everyone will know who their ward candidate is. I mean, I know I was a ward candidate for 10 years. Everybody had my number. You know, I served my constituents, and that's as it should be in politics. And I think that
I'm pleased that you brought that up, John, because it's also our responsibility as voters to hold you guys accountable. You need to have your ward councillor's number on your phone, and you need to know who's in charge of your municipality. And, you know, Muzuli said it just now too. A lot of people don't know who these. That's on us. That's not on you guys. As much as you're out there trying to get our votes and get our attention, and that's a hard job. I think campaigning is probably tougher than it's ever been. And social media doesn't necessarily help because people get completely caught up in nonsense. Now, it would be remiss of me to not give John a chance to talk about the track record.